Thanks for joining. Today, we're going to be talking a little bit about the anatomy of a job. And in specifics, we're going to be talking about how to dissect the job description and break down all of the information that the company is going to give you before you even get to the interview stage or before you've even fully applied, and trying to determine, is this job a job that you see yourself being happy with? Is it a right fit for you? What skills are they looking for? And what is it that they're expecting out of applicants? And better yet, how to really make your application stand out to match what they're looking for. So I want to get started just with a pretty famous quote, and that's, choose a job you love and you will never have to work a day in your life. And part of the reason I'm bringing this up now is that process of finding what you love to do really starts with the job description that's posted for any position that's out there. That job description gives you your first insight into what you're going to be doing on the day-to-day in that job and what the work involves. And it's so important to take time to read through and know the ins and outs of what that is, because when you read just a simple 1 or 2 sentences about a job, it may sound intriguing. But if you start nailing down into the day-to-day responsibilities, you may start to realize, I don't like doing some of these things, and maybe this won't be what makes me happy. And ideally, we want you to leave FGCU and go on to a work environment where you're going to be happy and you're going to be productive and enjoying what it is that you do, and that you're excited to go to work every day. Because I know for a lot of us, that's how we feel when we come into our jobs to work with students each day. We're excited to be here. We love working with you and we love seeing your faces and getting to do this professional development with you. And we want you to have that same level of enjoyment. So a quick overview as we start jumping into what it is the job description contains. There's really 4 key parts, and we'll break down each part individually. The first part that's often in a job description is the company description, or an overview of the company. It'll then usually give you a quick synopsis or role description of what it is this position does and why it's essential to the company. From there is where the meat of the job description is, and that's where it goes into the role responsibilities, or the specifics of what you do. And then after that, you get into the qualifications and finding out, what do you need to have in your background to be a good fit, and what is the company looking for? Like I said, we're going to talk about each of these factors very in depth, but each part is important to pay attention to. Some parts definitely you want to spend more time on, but you want to make sure you're reading the job description in its entirety and breaking down all of these parts to get a real feel for what this company does and who they are and what they expect out of this role. When we get to the company description, this can appear a couple of different places in the overall job description. Some places start off with this being the very first thing you see. Some places start off with it at the bottom. It also may not be on the job description itself. It may be on the website where the company posts all their jobs. And it might be as simple as that's their landing page. And then below that, you'll see the option to search for open positions with the company. So it can appear in a lot of different places. And it can contain a variety of different things. I picked out some common things that come up here, but it can really be across the board, whatever that company feels is important to them. One of the most common things, and the thing I would say you should pay the most attention to, is the values of that company, or what their core beliefs are. All of us have values. We have values that we bring into any environment we go into. We have personal values, professional values, work values, different things that are important to us that may not be as important to someone else, but it is very important to us. The same thing can be said for companies. Some are going to have these ideas that are really fundamental to who they are, what they do, how they act, and even how they treat their employees and what the environment is like. So when you're reading that job description, try and take a note of those values. For example, if you have a really fond passion of giving back to the community and helping others, you may want to take a look at a company's values and see, do they have that same kind of commitment? If they're talking about things like community service, giving back, volunteerism, and those type of descriptors in their company description, then you can probably bet that that's going to be a good fit with your values. So making sure you're paying attention there just to see how it aligns with you. Another part that you might see in the company description is a little bit about the CEO or who the founder of the company was. This is not that important of a piece, but it gives you something that you can look forward to bringing up in conversation with an interviewer or recruiter that you might meet with. If the CEO is mentioned in the article, you should definitely do some research and find out what is it they're known for? Why did they find this company? What are some of their great achievements? Because that might be a connection that you can make with your recruiter and say, I'm really happy to work here because I know that your founder was such and such, and I know that he did an excellent job of promoting this, or I know that she was well renowned in this field or is well renowned in this field for her discovery of XYZ. And you can talk about that in the interview and show that you really did your research to understand the company and what their initial conception came down to. And that can also, if you read a little bit about that person, it might tell you what the company's values might be, because the values often stem from the leadership that's running the organization. There also might be a section on the history of the company, and this can be important to pay attention to. If it's a fast-growing company, you're probably going to see that in how they describe their history from their founding to what they do now. And you can get all kinds of things about their evolution. Maybe they started out doing one particular thing, and that evolved into them doing 20 or 30 different things for some larger organizations. So it really gives you that feel for what is it that they're doing and how it's working for them. And another great kind of soundbite that you can pull from these descriptions are the accolades. So a company that's received any kind of awards, any kind of notoriety publicly, those can be great things to talk about. For example, if you want to go work for a car manufacturer or a car company, many of them have J.D. Power and Associates awards that are easily accessible online that you can find out about. And you could go into that and say, I'm really respectful of this motor company because you receive such and such awards for safety, or you receive such and such awards for customer satisfaction, whatever it may be. And that's across the board for all industries. I'm picking kind of car industry because we see it all the time on commercials on TV. So it's one that you might be more familiar with. But there's awards in specific areas, specific companies, for specific people in organizations even. So if they mention those things, be prepared to know a little bit about it, just so you can maybe bring it up in a future interview. I did pull up a couple of examples of company descriptions from a few places, actually one place in particular. And I'm going to show you two different company descriptions they use, because each job you apply for, the company description may be tweaked a little bit because it may be tying in some specific things about that department. So I'm picking on Twitter at the moment, and we have their company description here. And it's a pretty generic about just what it is that they do. But one of the things that's really interesting about this one is it does give a quote from their founder. Now, it doesn't necessarily say that it's their founder, but you just see a quote with a name that's attributed to it. If you do a quick search, you'll quickly find that Jack Dorsey is the current CEO and one of the co-founders of Twitter. So you should probably know a little bit about him since they're referencing him in their job description. And it would be good to talk about what his vision and mission for the company is whenever you go into an interview. It also talks a little bit about just what the environment is like there. So you can see that they highlight words like collaborative and creative and curious in defining their people. And those might be some values that they expect out of someone coming in. Now, this is what they use for a very broad-based posting in their company. They also have individual departments that tweak this a little. So I want to show you one from their 0 to 1 team. And this is their team that works very specifically on accelerating ideas from conception quickly to being implemented and being very innovative. And you'll see in this case, they're not talking as much about the company. They're talking a lot about what this team does and how it helps Twitter, what its core function is to Twitter, and what its values are. You'll notice that there's a lot of language talking about how user-centric they are and how innovative they are. It also kind of gives you a feeling of how fast-paced they are. You see that mentioned a lot, that a lot of things are quick, getting stuff to customers' hands fast. And even in their name, 0 to 1, and how quickly you're counting up, that's a great descriptor for giving you a feeling before you're even talking to anyone there of what that environment might be like. The second part is the description of the role. In this section, that's where you can kind of sum it up as being the elevator pitch that the hiring manager has. So ideally, you have an elevator pitch selling yourself in 30 to 60 seconds about what it is you do, what you're passionate about, what you hope to accomplish, what your goals are, and what your interests are. Well, that's what the hiring manager has written in this part for their description. It's that I have 30 or 60 seconds to talk about this position at the end of a meeting to someone I pass on the street. Here's what I would tell them about the role. It's also likely to be loaded with keywords, not necessarily skills that they're looking for in this section. That often comes later on in the role responsibility. but the description often has a lot of keywords that define some specific things they might be looking for, or specific things that maybe define the environment they're looking for. And you can often take these keywords they're referencing and combine them into some of the skills that you want to talk about in the job, or that how you match the job in your cover letter or resume. Again, I pulled an example, and this time I'm pulling from Apple, and it's actually just an entry-level member of their Genius team in the store and what it involves. As you read through this, try and think about what are some of the key things that you pick out from this description, or keywords or combinations of words that might be present there. I can prompt you a little bit with a couple of the words that I found that were kind of repeated as an idea throughout this description. So they used a lot of things about time, quickness, speed, those types of things. Those kind of stood out to me as one of the things that they might be really looking for, is someone who can work in a very fast-paced environment and is ready to hit the ground running each day doing things. So you got the fast aspect, the friendly aspects there too, and they have a couple of words in there that kind of allude to this is a customer service related position. And a lot of the conversation is going to be centered on customer service and working with people. So you have to be able to do some of that positive reinforcement to help build the brand name and build the reputation that Apple's come to be known with. Let's move on to talking about the role responsibilities, because this is really the bulk of where the job description comes into play, because this is the section where the hiring manager is going to go through and they're going to be talking to you about every little thing this job does. It's going to be a big overview that gets into some of the nitty-gritty tasks, from whether you manage people to whether you're on a sales floor to do you have to do customer relations, do you have budget control? All of those types of details can be described in this role or in this section of the job description. And you want to make sure that you're paying attention. A lot of times this is going to be in a bullet point format, but not exclusively. It could be paragraphs or it could be short broken up sentences. You want to make sure that you read through this thoroughly, because there's so much detail here. And this is where you're going to really determine if this is the job for you and how you fit with it. A lot of times people have this bad habit of they get so excited reading the job description. They see the first 2 or 3 bullet points and they're like, I love this. This is the job for me because I want to do all 3 of these things. But there might be 12 bullet points. And if there's 12 bullet points and you only read 3 of them, well, there's still a lot of that job that you haven't checked in on to see how do you like it and will you fit with it. You may find out that the other 9 bullet points, 75% of that job, aren't things that you really enjoy doing. So it's really important to read each one and take that time to really process what it is they're saying there and understand everything about the job. The other thing with this section is this is where you're going to pull a lot of the hard skills that you want to talk about in your resume and cover letter that they might be looking for. You can also pull some of those soft skills that they might be looking for, and you can talk about them and tailor your resume and cover letter specifically to the company. And we'll talk a little bit about how that tailoring process works, but definitely when you're doing that process, you want to make use of some of our other resources where we go in depth about resume writing and how to really pull out those accomplishment statements to tailor to these individual bullet point statements that they're putting in the role responsibilities. I did kind of come up with a little process you can follow to evaluate the responsibilities as you're going through and thinking about what it is you want to do. So like I said earlier, it starts with reading each individual bullet, going through it line by line. After you read each line, I think there's some questions you should ask yourself. One is ask yourself, have I done this? Because if you have experience doing that, that's definitely something you want to start highlighting in your resume and cover letter, because you already know how to do this. You're bringing something to that company because you've done it and you know what you're doing. The next thing you should ask is, do I want to do this? This is where you're making that evaluation to get back to, will I be happy in this job? Will it be a job where I never have to feel like I'm working a day in my life, kind of like that entry quote I had? Because if you're saying yes to all of these, there's a good chance that you're going to like this job and you're going to enjoy doing it. If you're saying no to 50, 75% of the items on the list, that might be an issue for you. You may not be happy there. Now, there's not necessarily a perfect job out there where you're going to say yes to every single task that's on the list. But if you're saying yes to most of them, that's a good sign. If you're hitting that 75, 80% yes, you're probably going to be very happy in that role. Most people don't enjoy filing, but that might be one of the points that's there. So if you're not someone who's super organized and doesn't like filing, but that's the only thing on the list you don't like, you should still apply because that's only a minute portion of the responsibilities. You're going to enjoy the other parts of it. And then from there, it's really where you start tailoring your materials. So go through each bullet point and go through your resume and cover letter and say, do I have something that talks to this particular responsibility highlighted someplace? So again, pulled up a sample, and this time I'm pulling from Target, and it's a marketing manager position. And I'm going to kind of walk through that process that we just talked about to evaluate the duties and responsibilities of this position. So let's just start with the first bullet point that's here. You will execute strategies which positively impact guest in-store experience that increase brand awareness for the assigned business areas. So the first thing you ask is, do I have experience doing that? Hopefully the answer is yes. Hopefully you've had an experience where you're doing it. And my fake persona here that I'm doing this for, they've done this. They had a job that correlated directly to doing this. Then they ask themselves, do I want to do this? And because they've done it in the past and they know a little bit about this aspect, they're like, yes, I did enjoy doing this. And now the fun part is where they get to tailor their materials to match that bullet point. So in my person's case, they're going to go to their resume and they're going to talk about the role that they had with the university bookstore working as a sales associate. And in that role, they got to design a merchandise display that drew attention to a current promotion and increased the sales of a particular item by 5% during that promotion period. They really want to highlight that skill because it can start tying into how they draw awareness to the brand and what was going on in the business, which is what this bullet point is hitting on a little bit. And the last part of the job description that we're going to talk about, and that's common, is the qualifications. And this is where you're going to really determine if you should apply for the job. There's 3 different types of qualifications you might see when you're reviewing job descriptions: minimum qualifications, preferred qualifications, and desired qualifications. In the minimum section, for most jobs, you're going to have to meet everything that's in the minimum because that is the bare minimum of what they're looking for. They want at least these things. So you want to go through that section and try and put a check mark next to everything saying, I have met this. Preferred qualifications are those things that the employer really wants out of whoever they hire. They might have a big list of things here. There might be 5 or 6 things here. You don't necessarily have to meet all of the preferred qualifications, but you should try and meet some of them. If you don't meet all of them, no worries, still apply. This is just that section where they're kind of highlighting the things that are going to give you an edge over other candidates. So if it's talking about a position and it says a bachelor's degree is preferred, finishing your degree from FGCU is probably going to give you the advantage there over someone who would apply with just an associate's degree or lower for that position. So pay attention to those preferreds, and if you're meeting several of them, definitely apply. Even if you're only meeting a couple, you should still consider applying. If they have a section on desired qualifications, this just might be like a wish list they have of other things they're looking for. This shouldn't make or break whether you apply for the position or not. These are just things that if you have them, great. If not, you can maybe highlight how you're hoping to get that qualification in an interview, or pull out that you're very interested in learning and developing more in that area, just to show that you want to have that continued growth to meet what they're looking for. And this time I'm going to pull a couple different examples from some different companies as well. The first one I'm starting with is Northrop Grumman, which is an aeronautics company or ballistics company. They do a lot of government contracts. Here's some positions for one of their financial positions, or a description of what they're looking for a financial officer in their area. And you'll see they have some essential qualifications and experience. They're using a different term here, but most likely this would be equivocal to their minimum qualifications. So ideally, if you read through this essential set, you want to be able to go through and say, I have every single one of these. But they also list a desired qualification, and that's to have a CPA qualification or CPA license. If you don't have that, because it's only desirable, you should still apply because you still have a good chance. And one of the ways that you could cater your materials or even consider progressing in this field is maybe if you have a desire to get that certification, or you're even working towards completing it, you'll want to highlight that in your resume and cover letter to show that, hey, I have a strong interest in this, or I'm taking courses or taking the required tests or exams to get my CPA licensure. that's going to be something that says, hey, you know, I don't have this yet, and I know you're looking for it, but I'm trying to get there, which can sit favorably with them. But even if you're not, you can still apply because, again, it's just desirable. Just know they might want you to get that after you've worked with them for so long, and they might actually help you get that qualification if you are hired in that position. The next one I'm going to pick from is actually a company that's local in the Fort Myers area even, is Neogenomics. And I picked this one specifically because they don't necessarily use the same way of laying out their qualifications as I talked about. You don't see the words minimum, preferred, desired as their headings. They used education and then just qualification requirements. So you have to read a little more intently here. The education section probably are going to be minimum qualifications, or that's how you can consider it. They're saying that you need a bachelor's degree. So if you don't have a bachelor's degree, you probably wouldn't want to apply for this position because it's saying that it's required. When you get to the qualification requirements, though, this is where you have to pay close attention, because if you look at the first bullet point, that is obviously not a required minimum qualifications because it says license preferred. Just means that they would like to have that license. Great if you have it, but doesn't necessarily mean that you can't apply without it. And then you start going through some of the other things, and they're highlighting skills they're looking for. Again, we don't know if these are preferred or required. So a good rule of thumb is to kind of look at a qualification requirement section like this and maybe evaluate and say, do I meet 80% of these? And if that's the case, you probably would stand a good chance if you apply for the position. Now that we've talked about some examples of what should be in job descriptions and what you can look for, I also want to take a moment to talk about some scam job descriptions that are out there, because there is a big business in trying to get people's information from fake jobs that they post to some of those big national public job boards, and even get through to some of our local job boards as well, because these can be very convincing things that are hard to tell apart. And this is, again, a big reason why you've got to evaluate this job description. But if you start noticing some of these things, then you might want to stop and ask, hey, do I want to apply for this or give them any information? Because this might not be real. This could be someone trying to get my information or trying to take my identity. A company's job description should be free of typos and have proper grammar. If you're seeing a lot of mistakes, that job description was not reviewed by a lot of people like a typical company would have. Typically, whenever a hiring manager is drafting a job description, they're writing it, it's probably going through their supervisor, it's going through an HR department, it's getting reviewed several times. Those mistakes shouldn't be present. If there's a logo on the job, it should appear crisp and not distorted. It should look like the actual company's logo. If it's a reputable company, you can go online, search for their website and see their logo and kind of compare them and look, does it look like they stretched it or distorted this? If it is, that's probably not from that company, because a company is very prideful in their brand image. They have very strict guidelines for how their logo can be displayed and used. They're not going to have it looking funky on something. Also, as you're trying to find a company online, if you can't find any existence of them, they don't have a social media site, they don't have a website, any of those types of things, probably are fake. The salary can be another big indicator towards you. If it seems a little too good to be true, if you're looking at other jobs and you're like, a typical salary for someone at my level is 42 to 45,000. And this one all of a sudden is like, we'll pay you 80,000 and they're the only outlier there that's offering that. I would stop and ask some questions, because that might be an indicator that it's a little bit too good to be true and you shouldn't apply because it could be a scam. If they ask you to pay them, so a job shouldn't ask you to pay to apply. If they're asking you to buy any materials up front before you've even been offered the job, or without doing an interview, they said, you're going to get this job, you need to buy these materials, start doing this now, stop and pause, because you don't want to send your credit card, check, bank account information to someone asking that question, because a reputable company is not going to be doing that. They are not going to charge you upfront to apply to their jobs. When you're recruiting for a position, you want a broad candidate pool and you're not going to put it behind a paywall. So don't pay to apply for their positions. And if they're asking very early on for deep personal identifiable information, then ask some questions. They don't need your bank account information. So if they're asking for your bank account information in the application, nope, you don't need to give them that until you've been awarded the job and you're going through payroll processes. So that's like a first day of the job task for when you provide them that information, not when you're applying to the job. So be mindful of things like that that's trying to get your information and trying to maybe steal your identity or steal money from you. The next thing I'm going to talk to you about or kind of demonstrate is just some tools that we have to help you tailor your materials. And one that I'm really excited to share with you is Jobscan. This is something new that we purchased as a department this fall to help our students out. And it is a great platform that lets you do an instant analysis of how your resume aligns with a posted job description. It also helps if you've ever heard of applicant tracking systems or ATS systems. These are computers that sometimes do the initial review and weeding out of job applicants to see if they meet qualifications. It helps you understand what those systems might be looking for. So it has several purposes that it does. But what I love about it is it can help you start to figure out what are the keywords and job descriptions and which ones do I need to include in my resume and cover letter. With this system, I'm going to demonstrate it in a second to show you how it works and what the report looks like. But anyone can go on to their website, it's jobscan.co, and create a free account and get 5 free scans of a resume and a resume cover letter. If you use up your 5 free scans, we have the ability to upgrade you to a professional license where you can do unlimited scans for a period of time. We can't give it to you indefinitely, but we can give it out to you in 30-day increments. While you have it, you can be using it to help cater your materials and really get a deeper understanding of how to make your materials pop out in the eyes of ATS systems and recruiters. This is the Jobscan platform. Right now, let me go back to the main dashboard. Whenever you create your account and log in, you're going to come to a screen that looks somewhat like this. Mine's a little different because I have some different things going on, but yours will have this part down here called Create a New Scan. And in this section, you can copy and paste your resume. You can see I have a sample resume from our office put up here already. And I found a job description with Amazon for this kind of position that deals with environmental safety and employee safety. And I've pasted that job description in. One thing to know when you are pasting job descriptions into Jobscan, that company profile at the beginning or the about the company section, you want to leave that off. You want to make sure you include what the position is, the general description, the responsibilities, and the qualifications though. Those are the key parts that are going to help figure out the keywords you want to search for. With your resume, you can definitely copy and paste it in here. What I recommend doing, because it gives Jobscan some additional tools, is do the upload resume option and browse your computer to find the document you want to upload and upload it that way. So in this case, I'm going to upload our public health resume. And it'll populate it in here. When you upload the resume, they do prefer that it be a Microsoft Word docx file, not a PDF file. So keep that in mind as well. Once you have those two things in there, you hit the scan button and it'll create a scan to see how well your resume matches. In this case, because I'm using a very generic sample resume, my match rate is going to be really low. It's actually under 20%. Once your resume is tailored, you'll see that match rate keep going up. Jobscan recommends that to beat ATS systems, those applicant tracking systems, you get to at least an 80% match. If your job's not necessarily going through a computer system review, though, that 80% number is very flexible. I would say in general, you want to be aiming for 65, 70% or higher matching in your skills. The report it generates is great though, because it's going to tell you a lot of different things. Because I know the company's website that I'm applying for, and I know that's an Amazon position, it does give you information on their ATS system if they use one. So in this case, it found that Amazon uses an ICIMS system. And then it gives me some specific tips on how to talk about or edit my resume to meet what that system looks for, and maybe some nuances, because there's hundreds of different systems out there and they all look at slightly different things. It gives me some other general advice for the job. And it's even looking and it says, hey, this job requires or prefers a bachelor's degree, and we found a bachelor's degree on your resume. So it's telling you right off the bat, you meet the education requirements. So it's helping you figure out how to match to those qualifications. It does say up here, and I'll get to this in a minute, I'm missing some skills and keywords. So I want to pay attention to that section when I scroll through the report. It gives me a lot of things that I did really great too. And it's like, oh, your date formatting is good. Your file name is concise and readable. We found different sections on your resume that are common for what recruiters are looking for. The next section is recruiter findings. This is where Jobscan takes advice they've received from employers and recruiters nationwide, the people component of the recruitment process, and takes their advice and starts matching your resume with things that recruiters often look for. So one of those is word count. One is measurable results. So Jobscan's found in their surveys of employers and recruiters that you should have 5 specific achievements or measurable results in your resume that are highlighted. Talks about the job level match, says this is a junior level role. Given the experience of this person and their education, they're a great fit. It talks about, does your tone positive and does it meet what they're looking for, or does it contain words that should be avoided? If you uploaded your resume as a docx file, it'll do this premium ATS and recruiter finding search on it because it will search deeper into the document and it'll look at a lot of things about your formatting. You'll notice one of the things it says here is that there's a lot of bold font on the resume I uploaded, and that maybe I should consider changing that bold font a little bit and removing some of that styling because it might be a little bit too much, and I can improve readability by removing some of that excess bold font. But a lot of the other things are great. The next section is where you really want to pay attention. This is the hard skills section, where it goes in depth and talks about what are the skills that they're looking for that we can either predict. So it has predicted skills. This is where Jobscan's looking at all the jobs that have been scanned that are maybe similar to this one and what were things that those jobs were looking for. It has required skills, ones that it's pulling out of the qualification section of the job description. And then it starts doing counts of other words that it hears over and over, those keywords or key skills in the job responsibilities. And it does this for both the job description and the resume. So you'll notice in my resume, I listed CPR certification at least once. The job description also listed it at least once. So that's good. I matched a required skill. The same thing can be said for first aid. However, in the required skills, they're also looking for someone who has occupational safety and health administration or OSHA experience. That's in the job description, but it's not in my resume. If I have knowledge of that or some experience with that, I need to go back to my resume and add in that skill because it is coming up as something that's likely required for that position. So if I can get that tailored into my material, it's going to improve my match rate. They're also looking for someone who has Microsoft Word experience. Don't mention Microsoft Word in my resume, but they're looking for it in the job description. So again, I need to go edit my resume to talk about that experience. You know, I designed my resume in Microsoft Word. I definitely have that skill. Maybe I need to add a skills section and add software that I'm proficient with to my resume to get that up there. Because if I show more, I can actually see they're looking for Excel as well, and maybe some other softwares that I can tie into that section to start meeting some of these hard skills and soft skills that they're looking for. It does do a soft skills section as well. Again, go through it, pay attention, and see where you can cater your resume. Managing a team is one that rose up here, and I don't have that on my resume. If I've managed people, I want to go back in and add that. It'll add in another keyword section. I would put some low importance on this section. These are just things that if maybe we're in the job description repeatedly, so we can see the word management is mentioned 7 times in the job description, but only once in my resume. You know, I might want to talk more about that. Risk is not mentioned in my resume at all, but it's mentioned in the job description 4 times. Maybe I want to talk about any experience I have with risk mitigation or risk management, just to get some of those keywords present. And then you can also go over here and add a cover letter if you want, scan that as well. Or once you've scanned a resume, they have this cool tool called a job matcher, which will take you based off of your resume to look at some other jobs that are out there that you would maybe be qualified for. So you can go through here and maybe see some other things based off of these skills that you're bringing forth that places are looking for. So it can be a quick way to find some other jobs out there that maybe are related to what you want to do. Our social media platforms are a big shout out for things that we can help with tailoring your materials. Our YouTube channel in particular, we have several workshops just like this one recorded out there that you can do. We also put a bunch of tips on our LinkedIn, our Instagram pages, and our Facebook page. So if you're not following us on our social media platforms, please take a moment to do that right now. The other great thing about our office is we do offer one-on-one individual appointments to do resume and cover letter reviews and go over job search strategies. We're happy to meet with you. You can schedule appointments with us online on our website. So that's fgcu.edu/career services, or by stopping in our office. We're in the small building between Howard and McTarnigan Hall. It's the Center for Career and Exploratory Advising. Stop by and make an appointment at our front desk with someone to do a resume review and get some more individual feedback on how to cater your resume to a job that you maybe really want and you're applying for.